The New Age movement really had a major influence in a lot of people's lives, and it definitely did for us. And so when people were coming around introducing us to like sage and crystals, I would look at these other people who were like really high up in their quote unquote spirituality, and I'm like, I actually admired that. I'm like, how do you do that? How do I get to that level? In New Age, they promote a lot of like self-healing and empowerment, and like you're a god and everything like that. Obviously, you want to feel empowered, and it was very convincing, everything that was being said. And so we agreed with everything that was being shared with us. And we were even more attracted to these things because how it was presented was that it's going back to your ancestors, going back to your roots and your culture. And the world has made Christianity to look like a very oppressive faith. We have this longing to be more connected to our culture. We were both just really open to anything. We were just like trying to discover what we believe. The thing that people won't tell you about like getting into these practices is the dark side of what you'll experience once you're in it. We didn't find any type of healing in it, and actually experienced a lot more depression. I just felt such a heavy mental fog on me, and like I just literally felt something physically oppressing my mind, and it was just a really dark time in my life. Hey guys, it's Leanne. It's Lena. Welcome back to another week on our channel. For this week's video, we wanted to talk about our testimony coming out of New Age and coming to Christ. The reason why we're really just wanting to take time to dedicate to really unpacking that is because we really want to lay out the framework for why we're so consistent in just sharing our testimony, and why we just feel always led to share our experiences, because that really is a way for us to just really spread the good news of Christ and just be able to testify of why we believe what we believe, in hopes of just being able to bring others and bring the light of God to the lives of other people. So let's get into it. So for those of you who've seen our other testimonies, we've kind of touched base on this experience before, but we're gonna dive a little bit deeper into it. And if you've seen some of our other videos, we've talked a lot about our experiences coming out of cults and stuff like that. And a lot of you might be questioning, how do you keep getting pulled into this type of stuff? But that's because we're just sharing with you guys our growing journey and our faith journey. And so obviously as we were growing, we ran into a lot of things just trying to find our way, and we were at a point in our life now that we're a lot more rooted in our beliefs and everything like that. And all those experiences happened over a course of years. How we're sharing on our channel, it seems so back to back, but it definitely took several years, and it took even like a whole 4 years to even come out about those experiences that took place years ago. We just really specifically want to address last week's video about us denouncing an organization that we were once involved with. That definitely took a lot to come out with, especially because it's a nationally recognized organization, and I don't think there's many other people who have full out spoken about that organization, us being one of the first. We expected, we knew coming into it we would get a lot of backlash. Like we mentioned in the last video, a lot of people did benefit from that program, and we can say for ourselves that we did experience a lot of benefits from being part of the program. So us leaving that organization was a super hard decision because of all the benefits and the access that we were given through being part of that. But it just came down to a decision of our commitment to God that made us finally have to come to that decision. And we never even imagined, like years later, even coming out with the whole video, and we never even had it in our plans to publicly come out and renounce and denounce our participation in it, because as I shared, when God convicted me, I'm like, okay, God, you got it, I'm out of here. But I never wanted to go public with it until he convicted me that since you were publicly involved in it, I need you to publicly come out of agreement with it. So yeah, we definitely did experience a lot of backlash, and I can transparently say it did affect me a little bit, because these were people that we did have personal relationships with. So it's always a really hard thing to take, especially when you do genuinely love the people. Just definitely was taking time to allow God to heal us through that, and just process through that, because anytime you come out with your testimony and also having to reshare things that happened years ago, that like reopens you and puts you in a vulnerable place again. So we just wanted to just first of all address some of those comments, and just really want to take time to share that whenever we share our testimony, it's never, our heart's intent is never to make anybody feel judged or condemned. So first and foremost, if that was how it came off, we want to apologize for that, number one. And number two, also to explain to everybody the heart behind us ever coming out and speaking about these things is so that other people can be aware and set free, because we were once in a place where we were super deceived. But after God matured us and revealed to us that those practices are actually causing your life a lot more damage and actually putting you in a lot more bondage, then that's when He opened our eyes to recognize that those things are not there to benefit you or help you in any way. And so because He revealed the truth to us, we wanted to go forth and share the truth with other people so then they don't experience the same struggle that we did. People can easily write off that video because we're obviously in a place where we're like full on committed to our walk with God, and a lot of people will kind of write off like, oh yeah, of course you would say something like that because you're a Christian. But for those of you who know our story, have read our book and all that, you all know that we were actually very much opposed to the church at one point in our life and didn't want anything to do with the church because we felt the church was a poor representation of love to the world, and we just didn't agree with how church was being represented. And so for those of you who know, back in 2020, we broke away from the church that we were raised up in, didn't want any parts in it, ran to, specifically in 2020, there was a high rise in New Age movements, and a lot of people were trying to find an answer for what was taking place in the world, and that's how we ended up dabbling. So that's what we're going to get into in this video, is how we got sucked into New Age and how we found our way out of it. Like she said, and like we've said in previous videos, we were really open to New Age back in 2020 when the pandemic hit the world and there was a lot of social unrest, specifically against people of color, a lot of police brutality. And so in that time, a lot of people were trying to find healing and answers. And so the New Age movement really had a major influence in a lot of people's lives, and it definitely did for us. And so when people were coming around introducing us to like sage and crystals, and we never ourselves practiced tarot cards, but when people came around with that, we didn't think anything was wrong with it either. So we were surrounded a lot with those influences and meditation, and we found ourselves like on YouTube, specifically learning how to meditate. And I followed a specific YouTuber that was like teaching people how to open their third eye and all that. And I never got up to that level where I knew how to do that, but I was always very entertained, and like that was like something that I was really chasing after. I'm like, oh, how do I would look at these other people who were like really high up in their quote unquote spirituality, and I'm like, I actually admired that. I'm like, how do you do that? How do I get to that level? In New Age, they promote a lot of like self-healing and empowerment, and like you're a god and everything like that, which is super powerful because obviously you want to feel empowered, and it was very convincing, everything that was being said. And so we agreed with everything that was being shared with us, and we wanted to go deeper. And we were even more attracted to these things because how it was presented was that it's going back to your ancestors, going back to your roots and your culture. And at that time when there was a lot of social unrest and injustice being done to communities of color, I'm like, yeah, I don't want anything to do with anything that looks like oppression. And the world has made Christianity to look like a very oppressive faith. And don't get me wrong, there have been people who have used the faith to oppress others, so I won't deny that. And so coming from that lens, I'm like, yeah, I don't want anything to do with anything that looks like white supremacy, anything like that. So these New Age things look like they're more aligned to me, more aligned to my culture. We specifically were even looking into Buddhism, and because I was getting real deep into that. I don't remember a lot of what I learned, but I know I was like buying Buddhist books and downloaded some Buddhist rituals and all type of stuff. And she was looking into following after this one monk who was Vietnamese, and because we're Vietnamese, I'm like, I mean, that's my culture. Like that I have a longing, we have this longing to be more connected to because we were born here in the United States, we have no understanding really of our culture, and anything that can get me closer to that, I'm gonna go for that. And so, we were both just really open to anything. We were just like trying to discover what we believe, because another part of our testimony is that we left the Catholic Church. So we left the church. We didn't want to do anything with the church. And so we were like, okay, what do I really believe? Because all my life, my parents have forced me to be a Catholic. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense to me. Yeah. And so I was we were in our young adult years just trying to find our way and find meaning, find community. And so that was the first thing that was introduced to us. And so we got around other people that were practicing this and teaching us about it as well. And we ended up marching across the country, following a leader that really like pushed us deeper into those practices. And there was 3 women that literally did sage and crystals and put healing oil on us, and we were like really deeply
initiated.
We didn't know we were initiated until after the fact, but during that time we believe like all those things they put on us was really working, because it did work. But the thing that people won't tell you about like getting into these practices is the dark side of what you'll experience once you're in it, because you will feel healed for a little bit, but then later you're going to experience a lot more hardship after. And that's the thing that people don't tell you. And so for us specifically, when we were like digging into meditation and really like trying to go to crystal stores, trying to find healing and everything, I just felt such a heavy mental fog on me. And like I just literally felt something physically oppressing my mind. And it was just a really dark time in my life, especially because we had been betrayed by people who said that they meant us good, following after that leader that we marched across the country with.
After we experienced all that deception and being manipulated and taken advantage of, we were super broken from that experience of being so taken advantage by the very person that we like put our everything behind. And so that led us to just continue to keep opening ourselves up more. But we didn't find any type of healing in it, and actually experienced a lot more depression from that.
Both of us would like be fighting with each other even more, and it was just really toxic during that time of our life.
And for those of you who know about the relationship that I was in at that time, that put me in an increased state of oppression because of who I was connected to and the spirits that were connected to that person that was being invited to my life. And for those of you who watched that video when I talked about love spells, we both saw the dark figure in our house, which was a demon.
Just to give a little bit more clarity on exactly what New Age is, for those of you who might not be aware of what it is. The New Age movement started back in the 70s and the 80s, and it says that it's a movement that spread through the occult and metaphysical religious communities, and it promotes love and light as a foretaste of a coming era of personal transformation and healing. So all that pretty much is promoting like that self-healing, that transcendence type of mentality. And so that's pretty much what New Age is rooted in, is alternative healing outside of God. So obviously that type of movement would be very attractive to people who not really sold on God, don't believe in Christ. And it seems like an open-ended type of belief system that is good. It promotes all love, togetherness, and everything like that.
And
so
unity.
Another thing that the New Age belief system believes in is like the power of the universe, and there's power in creation, and all creation is of God, and which is true. Like God created everything, but the thing about that is it will make you believe like the created object is literally God. Like you pray to the trees and everything like that, or pray to the sky, to the universe. It just pulls you further and further away. It pulls you away from real truth, because it will like implant those type of ideas in your mind, which they all sound, they sound true and they sound good, but that's how deception works.
They will make you feel empowered because they'll tell you that you're a god, you're a goddess. And hearing that, especially being young, and you're like, yeah, I am. And what's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with believing that, because that's thinking positively about myself. Why would that be a bad thing?
The goal of feeding you all those ideas is to blind you from the reality of how dark it actually is. So just with our experience, like being surrounded by that, when we went on that social justice march, and specifically the 3 women that we were around, they sounded super powerful, and they were like our spiritual guides or whatever. And when we would like go to their house and everything, they would literally train up their young children in New Age and like teach their children to say these affirmations every morning, and it sounded super powerful. But as we were around them, we just saw how they did rituals and created potions and alternative healing. Again, it seemed all powerful and it looked like it worked, but when they actually applied it to us, there was a lot of dark spirits that started following us after we open ourselves up to that, like with her situation with her ex appearing in a dark figure,
literally holding me down and oppressing me and holding my mouth shut.
we started experiencing a lot of blockage where we would try to progress, but there was always something that was holding us back. Like nothing we put our hands to would work.
And that's when we really realize, like, when you're open to these other spirits, to these other ideologies, you're under their control. So while they're like promoting, or they make it seem like, oh, you're free, that's how the enemy works. He deceives you into believing that you can find everything you need in these new age things. But the reality is you've pretty much sold and signed your rights over to whatever spirit is in control behind the crystal or the tarot card. So
you'll think that, oh, I'm just doing this for good, but you don't have a right to tell the spirit world what they can and can't do to you, because you open that door, so now they can come in and do whatever. A lot of the new age practices are rooted in divination, and if you look at what divination is, basically the practice of using supernatural powers or omens to gain insight into a situation or a question. So obviously new age is all about trying to find the answer and pretty much predict the future and like ask, like, what am I supposed to do now? And it will seem very accurate because like tarot cards will tell you stuff and horoscopes will tell you stuff. They're like, wow, that's very accurate. It's scary how accurate it is. You'll agree with it, not knowing the doors that you open and all the attacks you'll end up experiencing.
While these practices seem super, super attractive, you don't understand how controlled you are by them. You've fully sold yourself to these things. You'll begin to see that you're a lot more bound than you are free, because what the enemy will never tell you is that you'll have to continually do things to appease whatever spirit that you've opened yourself up to. So it's never, you'll have to keep doing more and more and more and more rituals, more sacrifice, more dedication and devotion in order to get the answers that you are looking for. Versus when you're following God, if you're praying to him, he will answer you. He's not gonna go do this ritual, go do that ritual, now go put this thing together in order to get access to what you're looking for. If you're looking for healing, he just says, come to me all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Yeah. But with these other spirits, baby, if you're under their control, if you're under them, and if you've committed yourself to them, it's not going to be easy, smooth sailing. Like, they're not actually concerned about your well-being. Yeah. They want you to serve them at the cost of your peace, your joy, your mental stability, all of that. Yeah. So there's no real peace. These spirits that are in operation in the new age, they're selfish spirits. They don't care anything about you.
Any other practice in new age or in the dark kingdom is a lot more legalistic than what people will claim Christianity to be, because again, like we said, when you're in these alternative belief systems, you're required to be really strict on your practices, your rituals, and you have to do this and that,
and if
A through Z, mm-hmm. in order to access or gain favor from a certain spirit or gain access to a certain answer. Whereas with Christianity, it's about relationship rather than doing all these works in order to access something. Like, the enemy will lie and project things saying Christianity is all legalistic and you have to be perfect to come to God. No, you just come to God as you are, and then he'll be the one to perfect you and clean you up and remove anything out of your life that is not meant to be there.
These satanic practices require a whole lot more from you, and if you miss anything, oh, you're gonna get beat up for missing the mark, and God will never beat you up for missing the mark. So
our personal experience with New Age, while it gave us some temporary healing for a while, it never filled the void on the inside of us. So every time we push ourselves deeper into these practices, we only ended up feeling more empty and alone, because we were trying to find answers, but we just felt so alone. And one thing about Christianity that brought us back to God and back to Christ was the fact that God is a very personal God, and that's what we were really craving for. We were craving for a God that understood us. And so when we came to the end of ourselves and really saw how New Age was not giving us the answers or the healing that we were really looking for, and we came to our knees after just so many traumatic experiences with different people manipulating us and everything like that, that's when God really started entering our life and really healing us. Because after we came to the end of ourselves and stopped running away from God, that's when he was like, I've been waiting on you all this time for you to just come back to me, because I've always been here for you. And what people have done to you and what the world has lied to you about me has made you run away from me, but I've always been here to help you all along.
While you were trying to find it all in the world, everything that you were ever looking for was in me. And when we finally like just came to surrender, it was just such a powerful thing to see that he was still right there. Like after all that we had done, after pretty much rejecting him, he still welcomed us back with open arms, even after we ran far away and were just wanting nothing to do with him. He still was right there. And it was just very humbling just to know that as big as God is and as holy as he is, that he would still welcomes like pretty much a prodigal son, a prodigal daughter back to him. He's just been so good to us, and that's ultimately what we want for other people. We want other people to find that same healing, to find that same wholeness that we were finally able to find in him and him alone. And that's why we go so hard for him and go so hard about sharing and warning young people to not be easily deceived by these things that will promote themselves to sound good, and these organizations that will try to invite these other things and cause young people to open themselves up to these things and cause them to have open doors, because we know personally from experience what damage that has done to us. We wouldn't even want that to happen to our worst enemies. So that's why we just continue to speak boldly regardless of the backlash, in hopes that the seeds that are planted will one day flourish and grow, like whether or not it's received now or not. And we truly care for the freedom of people.
When the Bible says that he leaves the 99 to go after the one, and so we were the one that was on our way, running far away. And then he came and he encountered us, and we had a personal encounter with God himself, without anyone preaching in our ear, without anyone saying you got to do this in order to get to God, because we've had experience on both ends. We've had experience with being church hurt and coming from religion where people will say, oh, you got to be this way to get to God,
and just being spiritually manipulated.
Yeah. We were also on the other side where we were attracted to New Age and really attracted to everything that it promised us.
Both of those things had to disappoint us for us to finally understand God like for ourselves, because those other things were idols pretty much, where they were not representing who he truly was. And those things had to disappoint us for us to finally come to our knees and cry out. And when we finally came to that point, he answered us and made himself real to us.
And so after that personal encounter, that's when he started taking us on a journey to really get to know him for ourselves, to gain the word for ourselves, to know who he was rather than what people say he was, and so that people could not trick us or manipulate us. And that's how we started growing. And so we hope this encourages you, that if you're like new in your journey, that you can start from anywhere, and it's just baby steps, and even the baby steps he'll like really accelerate you in ways you wouldn't imagine. A little bit more about New Age. A lot of those practices are actually rooted in what's called Wicca, and for that type of practice, it's literally, Wicca is a nature-based pagan witchcraft religion that originated from the UK in the 1940s. And so I believe that a lot of young people, especially young people of color, are attracted to New Age and Wicca is because that for so long people of color have been so oppressed, and Christianity has been
a tool.
Christianity has been painted as the cause of all this damage and everything, and so people will run to New Age and Wicca. But we can see that Wicca is literally a pagan witchcraft religion that originated from the UK. So, not saying there's anything wrong with British people or anything, but that's where it came from.
Yeah, so
New Age came from the UK. And
while a lot of young people of color believe that it's going back to your roots, it's really not, because
it's from the UK.
Yeah. And that was shocking to us, because we were really thinking like me getting into New Age is bringing me closer to my roots, getting into Buddhism closer to my roots, all that. But they're all leading to a different source outside of even my culture. That's nothing close to my culture.
Another thing about Wicca and witchcraft is that it uses magic or supernatural powers, and it's often used to cause harm to others. So there's a lot of this idea that, oh, it's good witchcraft, But like we said, the enemy will deceive you to thinking that, oh, it's for good, but you don't know. The enemy will never tell you in the fine print what will actually be introduced into your life once you engage in this. I'll give you this, but behind it is actually going to cause some damage into your life. Acts of witchcraft include cursing, hexing, and bewitchment. Any witchcraft is not, it's not okay.
Just through our own personal journey of being super open to those practices, believing that it was bringing healing and also believing that it was drawing us closer to our roots. God has now put us in a place where we understand that it's supposed to be kingdom over culture. So the enemy does a really good job of causing division. And one of the best ways he causes division is through promoting culture over kingdom. And God had to definitely deliver us from idolizing our own culture. I legit can admit that I was idolizing my culture and idolizing in general people of color. Any movement that promoted people of color, I went hard for no matter what. And I say all the time, God will never help you build an idol. And those things were not drawing me closer to God. It was just drawing me to worship skin color more than I worship my God. And that's one of the major reasons why we did face a lot of suffering and struggle, is because God says over and over in the Bible, and there's so many stories in the Bible where the people were perishing because they chased after other gods, and the Israelites were consistently in bondage because they were trying to worship other gods, build these golden calves and idols. And God is a jealous God, and he means it when he says that.
And it says in Psalm 16:4, it says, troubles multiply for those who chase after other gods. I will not take part in their sacrifices of blood or even speak the names of their gods. That was a personal reality for us when we were chasing after different belief systems, different gods. It actually brought more sorrow and trouble into our own life, and that brought us to our knees and brought us back to God.
So God definitely had to deliver us from the worship of culture. And we know that us specifically speaking out against voodoo and hoodoo and all those practices in our last video, that sparked a lot of backlash, specifically saying that we were quote unquote anti-black, when in reality we're not anti-black. We're just upholding kingdom over culture. As you can see, I'm speaking even against my own culture, because in the Vietnamese culture there are a lot of Buddhists and people who worship Buddha. So it's not just I'm speaking out against hoodoo and voodoo that have quote unquote African roots. And I've actually found a lot of deliverance through people from the Black community, where I've matured in my faith with Christ, in my faith with God, through people who identify as Black.
And they taught us that those practices were actually ungodly.
So I would have never known that had it not been for people from the Black communities. I thank God for just putting these vessels like Tiffany Montgomery and Kevin L.A. Ewing and Reverend James Solomon in our lives, because maybe I would have remained blind had it not been for God sending these people.
And it says that the just are delivered through knowledge. So it was through us actually understanding what we were engaging ourselves with. That was how we were set free. A lot of us, and especially young people, we kind of like just get into things without actually understanding the foundations of things. And that was what happened to us. We were just like, oh, that's cool. But we never really dug deeper into where it came from. And so that's how we ended up being blinded by these things. It wasn't until God opened our eyes that we were delivered. But we definitely hope that our testimony and our experiences has been helpful for you all. And if there's anyone that can relate to our experience and our story, we'd love to hear about your own story, your own testimony as well, because we share these stories to show, number one, that we're human. And so we make a lot of mistakes, and we learn from them, and just to also show the power of God and how he can be able to step in and reach people who are going astray and are lost, because we were definitely lost. We didn't know who we were. We didn't know what to believe. And then it was God himself that made himself real to us.
Just wanted to take that time to really specifically address the things of New Age and our own testimony with that, and just to continue to keep sharing our heart on this channel, to ground this channel in that understanding that the purpose, the reason for any of this, anything, any testimony that we share is to show God's grace and mercy for chasing us down and for being the God of our personal deliverance. And whenever we see any way that the enemy is trying to prey upon those who may be vulnerable or not understand the things of the Spirit, we speak out against those things, because we were once in that place where we didn't know, had no idea, and were super open. And so we truly care for the souls of people, and we want to be, as God calls us to be, watchmen over people, meaning to just guard people and protect people, because we would have definitely appreciated that had we had people around us who truly looked out for us and were wanting to protect our souls from being led astray.
Satan works best in deception, and the occult works when things are hidden. So again, like we said throughout this whole video, things will be presented to you that sounds good, but if you don't know the truth, you'll be deceived into thinking like it's okay for me to engage in this without knowing or having any foundation yourself to stand rooted on the truth.
We are here just to be of that support and just want to continue to open people's eyes to these things so that no longer can the devil deceive us. We definitely hope that this helps to recenter this channel and allows you all to see our heart behind everything that we do. And we just want to be a safe place for everybody to just be real and raw about where they come from, their own testimony, and just to empower other people who have a testimony to share it, because your story and what you've been through has a purpose. God wastes nothing, and God wants you to share your own testimony, ultimately to lead other people back to Him.
Again, this channel, we talk a lot about spiritual warfare because we've experienced so much spiritual warfare. And so we can speak on those experiences to help guide you as well through your own faith journey, and to be equipped to be able to know how to navigate those experiences and overcome, because God will always help you overcome those obstacles and every spiritual attack that the enemy tries to send your way. So we love you guys, and we will see you guys all in the next video.